Well, welcome to the Structural Modeling Video Conference for May 16th, 2020. Our agenda for today is Systems Literacy presentation by Peter Tootenham. Peter's not online yet, so we'll give him a little bit more time to show up. One of the things that's happening now is that we're having more people starting to join these conferences. And we are limited to 6 people in the foreground.
Hello.
Many more people can be in the background and listen, but only 6 people can be in the foreground to talk. And so that's kind of this is going to be kind of a new thing that I have to do, is make sure that people get time to talk. We got the chat over here. I think everybody's kind of testing out. Kevin's tested out the chat. Gabriel's tested it out. And so if you're in the background and you can hear but you can't speak, and you want to speak, drop a note into the chat and I will put you in the foreground and put someone else in the background. So
can you hear you now?
So Kevin, can you hear me now? So, okay. So there's Zoom. No. Okay. So anyway, so that's going to be kind of a new challenge here for this today. So that's interesting. And is there anything people would like to chat about while we're waiting for Peter? Okay, Kevin. There we go. Yep. Kevin, are you there?
Yes. So I had a hour and a half meeting this morning with 2 people that can be on the facilitation team for Peter's project. And one is a new person to the group. He won't make it today, but 2 weeks from now he will. His name is Kirk Wigan. And he just retired from the U.S. Air Force Research Labs at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And he was a sponsor of SDD for several years with Tom and myself. And we have a big journal article in the Journal of Technological Forecasting and Social Change. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end today, just a minute that we want to try to launch a proxy project for the Systems Literacy Project, which is to have an action plan for a couple components like stakeholder identification and recruitment, and putting together the knowledge base, figuring out which platforms to use. Like we need a tool like Slack, something like that, to manage tasks. We need some type of knowledge base, like a wiki, to keep track of materials that are put together for reference and the different things that you typically do at the beginning of an SDD. We need some tools and some people to facilitate. So Tom and Kirk are going to step up, hopefully, and be able to help us with doing the facilitation and keep Peter and Janet and others focused on the content of systems literacy. And then, look forward to how we can make use of the good work of Joe and Mary in their ISM tool at some point as well, which should help us get some evaluative component of tools done. So
well,
maybe
that's interesting, Kevin. I think what kind of
have you heard from Peter recently? I'm just wondering why he is here right now.
Yeah, I haven't seen Peter. seem to be getting some kind of feedback. I think we're okay now. So the tool part for communication in distributed group is very interesting, Kevin. And it's and so now you were talking about a Slack channel and also some other type of wiki or something to organize the information.
Yeah, we need, just based on my experience, the facilitation teams for all the SDD projects that I've ever been on were never co-located. So we always had tools to help coordinate just the facilitation team. And then you need something to collect up references that people may have about the content, that can serve as a briefing pack for people that you're going to invite into the deliberation. And then there's tools for actually conducting the dialogue, like you're using right here with StreamYard or Zoom, something like that for the synchronous dialogues. But there's also tools for asynchronous dialogue. There's some that are in the SDD community already, like Idea Prism and Concertina and Logosophia. And there's others that are promising, like Lumio coming out of New Zealand for actually conducting dialogue. So we have a chance to use the Systems Literacy Project as a way to stand up a reasonable set of tools as a platform for conducting online deliberations. And, that can serve as a prototype for rolling out other deliberations we might design for helping communities plan their way out of this situation that we're in, and other topics.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. Well,
Is
while
my
we're waiting,
audio coming through? I was
yes, it
hearing
is,
a lot
Janet.
of feedback.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
I guess not.
I could. Yeah, no, we can hear you.
She can't hear you.
Okay, so I can't unmute her mic because she muted it herself.
I can see Kevin and Tom. I can hear Kevin.
We can hear you, Janet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the feedback, whatever that was, I'm not hearing that right now. We had a call with Peter yesterday, and Michael's calling him right now. I don't know where he is, but do you have any idea where he is?
No.
Okay.
So I think we'll take some time and just give them some time.
Yeah, and we can talk about the launch of the facilitation for Peter's project, and
Right.
Janet knows the project better than we do, and she can stand in Peter's role for that.
And I would also like to take a minute just while we're waiting here to talk about a piece of software that I ran across about a month ago, and I've been working with a little bit. And it's called Mayan, and it's a electronic document management system. It's very it's very well architected and well received. It's been on about 10 years now, and it's in multiple languages. But one of the things that I really liked about it is it has authentication, fine-grained role-based control over what people can do. It also has a workflow that it reminds me a lot of the workflow that Kevin was talking about within your process. That can all be programmed into the software. And if there's some interest in people looking at that or talking about it, we can at another time do that with just people that are interested. But I've started using it to organize our papers and publications and so forth, and it's really helping.
Does anyone here have experience with Slack?
Oh, yes.
Is it comparable? I don't know anything about them, but that's one that's always mentioned to me.
Well, Slack is kind of a free-for-all. And so it's a very intuitive front end if you are using graphs and email and text messaging. And if you're familiar with all these different ways of communicating, the thing about Slack is it has threaded conversations that you can search and find things, but it also allows you to very easily put in videos and spreadsheets and other documents, all kinds of like code and things like that. So much easier than email, but similar.
See, someone I haven't seen on our dialogues before, Gabriel. Maybe we can introduce ourselves. Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah. I can, okay, so Gabriel, sound is unstable. For Gabriel is from South America, I believe. And it maybe has doesn't have a good audio video connection. Yeah, he's only getting about 50% of the audio, so it's going to be difficult.
I'm having a lot of audio problems too. So if people get off the video, maybe the audio would improve.
Okay.
So is the audio better?
Oh, much better.
Okay.
All right, good.
Gabriel will be able to review it on YouTube at a later time. Maybe the recording will be clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Mayan, and so in contrast to what you described, this the operating environment of Slack, what's Mayan like?
Well, Mayan is an electronic document management system.
Yeah.
And it has very fine-grained role-based control. So what that means is, like you have your broker and your participants and your facilitators. All these people have well-defined roles and actions and activities.
Yeah.
Those workflows can all be programmed into the software, where you couldn't do that in Slack.
Okay.
Slack is just kind of like a free-for-all.
Okay.
It has, basically it is a document management system. So it has, it stores documents, it reads them, it has OCR, it has all these features. You can tag, you can do all kinds of things with it. But the primary thing that it brought up to me for this type of activity is actually the role-based access control and the workflow.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Typically when you launch a big project like this, I take it that Peter wants to do the systems literacy project on an international basis. So there's going to be a lot of people involved from a lot of different camps, and they all have, their primary references, and it becomes quite a big collection. 20 years ago, we were doing the Future of Energy Efficiency project for the Pacific Northwest. We had collected 3 gigs of reference papers. And that's not unusual. So, I mean, here we don't not necessarily going to be collecting up documents, but at least links to documents. And so we need a way to do that, and then a way to make that public at some point, like in a wiki. I don't know if mine has a public mode, but eventually people want to create a website of the project content where they say, okay, statement 23 from Peter concerned equifinality as a concept, and his major 3 references for that are the following: boom, 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 the links, and then someone comments, I would also add this link I found useful, and there then becomes sub dialogues about what's the best representative material, and in this project maybe for different age groups and so forth. So yeah, so we need content management of some sort for the topics, and we need workflow management for the facilitation process. And
yeah, so basically Mayan is a micro architecture based system, and it's so it basically has a web interface, but it has a fairly sophisticated distributed backend, which is very well architected. So it's easy. You can deploy it anywhere, but when you deploy it, it basically is basically a web page. That's how you access it, right? And then you have to have an account. So it could do all the things that you're talking about. I can bring up and show an example of what I have running here, if anyone's interested while we're waiting.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so here we go. We'll go ahead and stop that screen and share the screen here. And bring our application. Let's look at this. Okay. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, so it has a number of so basically it has a number of things that you need to do, but you can let's see if who's down here. It's Tom. Okay, so you can check out documents, the total documents, document types that you need to go through and actually set up the system with all these features, which I've just started doing here for our work. And basically, just as an example, let's just take a look at all documents. And so here's all the documents we have here. Here's one of our research papers. If I click on that, then I can review the research paper here, right? Which is in PDF, right? So you can see a complete PDF of it. But then if you want to look at the content of this in ASCII, so you can take the ASCII and put it into a database or just pull things out of it, it also allows you to do that, right? It has OCR. It has just all kinds of very functional, very good features. Cabinets are one way of really locating things, right? So I've just started doing this for us. So I've got an admin cabinet, computer books, conference papers, systems books, and technical reports. And I've just started looking at the idea of our technical reports, but here I've got technical reports and then I have it by year, right? I haven't got them all in here, but basically here's year 2021. You look at that. You can look at all of the, so it's a very sophisticated system. Allows you to organize and search and find. It has full text search. So anyway, so that's kind of a very quick overview of that. I haven't done any indexes or tags yet, which of course which you would do to track things in more detail as you started collecting and working things up. And to add documents to it, simply drag and drop. It's very user-friendly type of, very easy to understand the mechanisms. So with that, I'll stop sharing that. And okay, still have my video. Yeah, my video is on. So could you not see the stream?
I could see the stream, but I just was still having these audio problems. I didn't know if, since you're just showing the ceiling or something, I didn't know if, there, that's better.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, that's good. Now, what I wanted to say was, I think, so we had a call with Peter yesterday and talked about focusing the systems literacy effort on K-12.
Mhm.
And I think that one thing we need here maybe is a project, sort of a meta project. We need a project for the organization of the systems literacy project. If we think of the systems literacy project proper as being a virtual version of the things that he has done before with ocean literacy, et cetera, where I guess those have been partly virtual and partly in person. But this is it's a more complicated subject, harder to figure out who the stakeholders should be, that kind of thing. So it needs a pre-project for the organization of the project itself. And part of the pre-project then would be this tools, exploration of tools. So I think that would be very helpful to have an actual project on the organization of the project.
Yeah, I agree that the planning process. I thought that's what Kevin and Tom and his other associates were going to start working on.
Right. My point was to articulate the difference between inviting the stakeholders and figuring out the stakeholders who should consider which stakeholders to invite. So we just need to be operating. We need to be thinking of this as two phases. I think would help. The tools and stakeholders that we would need for the eventual project are thinking about those and the document management and all of that just needs a project in itself. I think that that if we do it systematically in two phases, it can be done. But I think part of what has been a problem for Peter to this point is not separating those two phases, is sort of starting to think about, well, who should I have join the discussion about the 7 principles, and those aren't necessarily the people who should join the discussion about how to set up a project to get people to talk about the 7 principles. So Peter and Michael and I and a few others have been talking about this for 5 years now. We first learned about his ocean literacy work in 2015 at the ISSS conference in Berlin. And it's just because of the abstractness of the subject and the breadth and depth of the literature and possible ways of approaching it, it's just much more difficult to organize systematically, which is the benefit of Kevin, you and Tom, and taking Warfield's approach to organizing it. I just wanted to make sure that people were understood how slowly that might proceed, and how, if we separate it in our minds, we will be able to do it systematically.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Janet. I believe that it's simply like setting up a tool. Like if you need to have a group that's interested in that has a project that they will need the tool for, then you have to set it up. And I agree that that's setting up the tools and setting up the infrastructure is different than running the project. And with a distributed system, we need to set up something on the web, like on GitLab or on some type of web services, which I could probably do if there's people that are interested in working on it. We'd need to, something like Mayan, we'd need to do the workflow. And that would take the input of people like Kevin and Tom. But once you get that workflow put together, and with an open source tool like Mayan, you would have a pattern that you could use anywhere.
Right.
And,
well, in this, so that's, yeah, and I'm glad to see this Mayan material. Michael and I use Evernote, but we're always open to other document management. I don't know how many 100,000 files we have that we have migrated from one system to another over the years. But the just deciding how to frame the question of how to frame the question is sort of, I just keep feeling that there are meta levels of work that can benefit from systematic treatment.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Janet. And of course, one of the things that I did when I saw the principles I put out there was with my experience has been with a systematic and systems approach to different problems and systems literacy over a period of time. I fell back to Brian Marr's work on it, basically anything could be a system. I saw and participated in activities where they did that for not a K through 12, but like a 6 through 12 education within the Seattle schools. Also broke it down for some tests and deployment at the University of Washington, some between the engineering departments. Saw it manuals and the techniques also deployed at a large aerospace corporation, and also worked with it in very large governmental organizations. But the individual principles were always the same, and the context that it was applied in then essentially determined the final outcome. And so
right.
there's a lot of material that I have from Brian's work, and basically what he did was try to not simplify, but to let's say compartmentalize or regroup some of the work that Warfield had done. So,
right.
So basically, that's all kind of connected there.
Right. Did you share with us your sketch of the 7 principles, or did we just see that on the screen last time?
Let's see. I don't think I think I did distribute it. Let me see. If not, I'll for sure take it and distribute it with the notes for this week.
Okay. I wanted to say that Gary Smith in 2015 in Berlin, when he heard about Peter's project, he jotted down 7 principles on a napkin, and I don't know, we could probably access those, but his approach was very different. It was more one needs humility and the to appreciate the interconnectedness of the planet, that kind of thing. So the point is that that there is, there's a lot of, and all of this should come together at some point. His perspective, and he's a systems engineer, but it was more principles of sort of systems wisdom, as opposed to principles of systems analysis. And so this is the kind of thing that I think is helpful for us to bring out in this pre-project, maybe by taxonomizing the different perspectives that could be brought to asking the question of, what is the, I don't know, what should systems literacy, if there is such a thing as systems literacy per se, rather than systems analysis literacy, systems wisdom literacy, maybe those should be different things. So I think it's helpful to bring this out early on, because every time we've tried to picture getting people together to discuss this, or when Peter has tried doing dry runs at ISSS or at in COSI, we come up against the usual stumbling blocks of the supposed realism, constructivism debate about, are systems mental constructs, or are they real things in the world, or are they some hybrid between those, or the kind of things that Jack Ring and Len Tronchalli and people on the System Science Working Group list would go around in circles on. So as you're saying, Joe, you repeatedly say we need common context. We need common context in order to have any hope of using language in a way where we can communicate with each other. So
Yeah, so I think all of the issues that you're talking about can be addressed, and from the way that my view of this systems literacy activity, one of the key aspects that was new to me was this concept flow diagrams. And the concept flow diagrams were have a ranking and rating of concepts going what appears to me anyway, from being the most general to the more specific. And so that's kind of what the principles I thought were the most general. And then these would be ranked in a tree, and then you would flow the concepts down to lower and lower levels of detail in these particular areas. And as you did that, as you flow those down, then you can have the discipline of actually putting those into a tree structure of some kind. Now, there may be more than one tree, and then mapping between the trees then becomes an activity where people then become more specific and more focused on a specific context. But at least they have these fundamental concept trees that they can map back to, and then you can talk about how they're being.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, I agree completely, and I think I think what we've achieved here already is, I think, if one looked at, if one said there a systems analysis tree and a systems wisdom tree, and those should be relatable in some tree for which those are branches, and then within those branches there would be the concept flows. This has been very frustrating. The people who have these debates about constructivism versus realism, value-free versus value-laden, they never get together in a group discussion, group modeling, group learning effort and focus on this long enough to see that these are all in there. It's not
Yeah.
a matter of either or. They all have to be in there. I think Hall's work is fantastic. And as Mary was showing, he already had the question of the value perspective, and that could also be used to help organize this.
Well, yeah, I think one of the key things about Hall's work is that he says the values are one of the pieces that are uncontrollable, and so that there's no such thing as like universal values, and so that
right, but then a lot of Warfield's work is about people coming to appreciate. Well, there's the, what do they call them? The priority structures.
oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. But so you're not controlling the values, but if you're not talking about a value-laden perspective, then they tend to control things from the sidelines. So the values need to be upfront in the discussion.
Yes, so I agree that there are local types of value systems that are very important. Like Project A has a value system, Project B. And what I was trying to say about Hall's work is he was saying that there's no general, overall, global set of values, that they are specifically localized to the activity. And,
right.
And
I'd be interested in hearing from Kevin and Tom on their experiences with dimensions of values in their modeling efforts. The relationship between the prescriptive, or normative, the descriptive, is something that needs to be addressed explicitly in this effort. And I think the global local character is interesting. Did you mean global local in your and Mary's sense of?
I think that I was trying to just briefly paraphrase Hall's work with value systems.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe what he said was there is no globally acceptable value system.
Right.
There may be some universal values that do exist, but people have not agreed on them.
Right. I'd like to go back and look at what he said on that, because I think if that's recast as there are universal values, it's just that everybody is dealing locally with different constraints. So actually there's more apparent disagreement than actual disagreement. But again, I'd like to hear from Tom or Kevin on that.
Well, I'll have to get speculative, because I generally, and Kevin can bear me out on this, I don't think that the issue of the practice is to reduce plurality into unanimity, particularly around values. But values are, I think, expressed in terms of preferences. If what does one prefer, the value finds its expression. My understanding of value systems is that they're really value configurations, and that a given individual can have the same set of values and configure them in different ways for different projects and different circumstances. So I don't think that there is a universal one-size-fits-all configuration. But if one were to say, what are the values? Then if one contextualizes that and says, what are the values? These are the values. Which values have the greatest impact on the successful implementation of the program we're talking about? That might be of some use.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that so there's one question about explicitly
From
describing.
Kevin. Is there anyone?
What's that? Kevin?
Yeah. Go ahead. I just would comment next.
Okay, so there's one question about the, as the SGSR people discovered, the question of values and the system's perspective, should it be treated merely as a descriptive science, or did it have a normative character? Bertalanffy saw it. Several of these people were very strong in their belief that there was this ethical imperative within the system's perspective, that the Bertalanffy, Bolding, Rappaport, that it did not make sense to separate descriptive systems analysis from an ethical sense of connectedness and in service of humanity and the planet. So this is something that has been one of the issues that has divided people in ISSS is, and it shouldn't, because they should both be in there. The descriptive is in service of the normative and the ethical, and it's just a question of whose preferences, who has control. These, I think that all of these things can be reconciled, as Joe said, with multiple trees and showing how these things are interconnected. But I know that if Peter were here, and I hope his health is okay, he was feeling a little stressed yesterday when we were talking. But I know that he would be concerned about making sure that the ethical aspect of systems literacy was foregrounded. Now, one of the things, like he points out, that in the ocean literacy effort, I think the first sentence in the brochure says, this is about the ocean's impact on you and your impact on the ocean. So, the systems literacy in parallel then would have a goal of understanding systems impact on you and your impact on systems. And what does that mean? But that, that puts the people in the picture, and puts you in the picture, so that your sense of responsibility and appreciation needs to be front and center. Anyway, Kevin, what were you going to say?
Yeah. So on the values issue, and Tom reframed it as a preference thing. We in the way values come out in an SDD experience, for example, during the structural modeling phase, is people will say, should we take action A before action B? So there's a precedence or prerequisite aspect to that, which is kind of mechanical. But sometimes the choice of doing A or B is more value laden, and it depends on your ideological perspective or whatever. And so that the discussion about should A does A influence B, and if it depends on what you believe, then the discussion services the values of the different people in the dialogue, but we're not doing. We never do a structural model of values themselves. We don't say, do you prefer value A over value B? Okay. One of the reasons is things like values are so highly interconnected. Everything's connected to everything. And so it's the way that the values come out is to respect the authenticity of the individual contributors. Now, the way this ends up playing out, however, is through the deliberate, and the very basis of the notion of deliberative democracy is that through deliberation we experience preference shifting, and there's a new field that's emerged around this, studying this, called opinion dynamics. That what we find very reliably is that there's kind of two levels of preference shifting that go on during deliberation. One on, say, the structural type of discussion. Does what's the relationship of a pair of things? Does A influence B, or is A preferred to B? That dialogue may often start with 30% of the people saying yes, 30% saying no, and 30% saying I don't know. And then by the end of the discussion, after the first 7, 8 pairwise discussions, they start to drive themselves towards unanimity in the response. And what I think happens there is when you start a dialogue, there's a lot of ambiguity about what the actual dialogue is about. Even what the topic is still somewhat ambiguous. And until you start talking about specifics and specific contexts and specific actions, people don't even state what their position in. And after they start sharing their positions with each other, and if you protect their individual positions, their votes start going towards unanimous votes. So this is measurable preference shifting during the deliberations. I hope that helps a little bit. And a second aspect, unrelated, not about that, is the discussions that there's been so far that I've heard of the content of the systems literacy and the ocean literacy is very definitional and axiomatic. There's other ways of defining things. You could define systems literacy by planning how to do a bunch of ocean literacy projects for another 10 subjects. Let's do forest literacy from a systems perspective. Let's do climate change literacy from a systems perspective. Let's do 10 of them. And, systems literacy is defined extensionally, by extension, so there's multiple ways of defining it, not just the type of circular and never-ending arguments that the philosophers at the ISSS have gotten themselves into. And there, you can do it. Let's just do examples and work out the difficulties of the examples. So that's a different way of approaching that.
Right. Yeah, actually, I'm trying to go to his website, his systemsliteracy.org. He has collected, I don't know how many dozen there are, maybe 100 such literacy efforts. I'm sure he would say there is a forest literacy and there is a climate change literacy and there is there have been all of these other projects.
Right.
And there's this subtle question that we need to ask about. They've already done all of these projects, let's say 150 different literacy projects.
Yeah.
Have they, on how would we judge that they have taken a systems perspective or they haven't? What would that mean? To say that they have or they haven't? I agree with you that working from examples is and seeing what is common across the examples would be the way to show what is, the general systems perspective is that there's a commonality across these examples. But nowadays, everybody talks about systems. Everybody tries to take a systems perspective, I think. So what is it that they have? What is it that they're lacking? In contrast with when SGSR was founded, going on 70 years ago, 60 some years ago, speaking in terms of systems, trying to take a systems perspective, being aware of systems thinking as something that was valuable, is much more commonplace now. So it's not so much that we need to get people to think in terms of systems, or to use some systems language. So there's something more substantive that we would need to deliver. And to some extent, what Joe has here is part of the more substantive part, that there is a way to be systematic in describing and analyzing systems in terms of behavior and structure. That's part of the substance of it. Maybe Peter's aspect, Peter's emphasis on the systems wisdom side of appreciating interconnectedness and appreciating one's dependence on nature, and that's the more substantive part that could be emphasized too. But those two would have to be two different trees. So more thoughts maybe for if you want to respond, anybody.
Well, Janet, I think that it's an interesting approach. Again, I think there's some fundamental ideas and some fundamental issues about scope, like you talked about. Well, if we want to put together a project to plan this out, what would it look like? And there's obviously a lot of information out there about systems literacy, as you pointed out. So I'll just say now we've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, but if anyone is interested in mapping a detailed workflow to like an EDMS like Mayan, let me know, and we can start working that with the different groups, with the different roles, what people have to do, and we can start preparing a tool that would go ahead and organize the information. The other thing I was looking at with the Mayan tool is it's, again, a micro architected structure, so you're able to plug other things into it. So I think if we do that, then later on it'd be fairly easy to plug other types of software into it, like, for instance, the software that we did, that Mary and I did on doing the calculations and so forth. So, but first need to start with the basics. If anybody is interested in doing that, as I said, let me know. And I believe the other aspect of looking at these structures, how we structure this information and structure these concepts, I think it's important to try to keep a hierarchical type of binary tree for a number of reasons. The first reason is most novices in an area, that's what they do. They'll organize the concepts in a hierarchy. That's from Joseph Novak. When you become an expert, then you tend to make more networks and more feedback loops. And so if we're trying to do a common piece or a common piece of work that can be transported to different areas, I think we need to separate the hierarchies from the networks and we can have hierarchies, and then we can create networks by connecting the hierarchies. And we've shown that particular logical approach in some of our previous work. So that's kind of where I'm at for all this right now. If anybody has any further comments.
I think it might be useful to do a little model project that would have people's attention to, for example, there was just released a systems model of the COVID situation.
Okay.
I posted it on our Agora's page on Facebook. I can send it out. I forget the name of the system and the guy that's done it, but it's a public domain systems dynamics tool.
Uh-huh.
And so there is, and it's built for inviting critique and commentary, but I don't know how much facilitation they're doing around it. But that's something of interest to a lot of people. And it's a very value-laden discussion if you get people on different ends of the political spectrum involved in talking about components of it. So it's that's a particular topic that maybe there isn't a literacy project about, pandemics and epidemic literacy. I don't know if that's in Peter's list, but I would tend to doubt it. And it might be a timely thing. There's already a model of content, and so we wouldn't have to focus on building the content. Someone already has a model, and I mean, there's models of the epidemic itself, but this is meant more for public discussion. It's using systems language, but we could build a little facilitated dialogue around that, trying to invite conflicting perspectives to the table, seeing how we can conduct the dialogue using one or more or different online tools as a comparison. So it's just my current another topic, and be doing another specific literacy project. Now that's already couched in systems language and systems model.
And that's an interesting approach. I think anyone that's interested in doing that should let us know, and we'll then, take the interested individuals and see what the next steps are. But in summary, it seems to me what we've talked about is need a project to actually organize the tools and techniques to go forward. Basically, then if we have a tools and techniques type of thing, pick a small type of area that doesn't have a literacy component with it yet, and use that as kind of like a miniature test case. And people are interested in that, be sure and speak up and send comments to the list, and we can organize it and go from there. So
yeah, that's the baseline organizing tool. Is you have the listserv, the email list of the structural modeling group, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we might need to create a new one for systems literacy. What do you think, Janet? Is there one already?
What was your question?
Should we? I mean, right now the baseline for organizing the structural modeling group is Joe's email listserv. Do we need something like that, or does something already exist for systems literacy?
Probably something exists, but Peter knows much more about that kind of detail. I was just looking up epidemiological literacy. That is a thing.
Okay.
So, teaching for epidemiological literacy. It's just interesting. I put in the chat a link to a map that Peter had put together in 2018 for his on his co-exploration .org site, and I don't know how to search that to see what the various literacies are. I think your idea of taking a project around the pandemic and maybe testing out the literacy framing, it might be good as a test case, as Joe said. Without Peter's involvement here, I can't really say. Michael and I have been trying to help him, but it is really his project, and he has spoken with various groups, and I know he's spoken with some teachers recently. So I'm not sure exactly what his thinking is.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that anything that you do here with sort of bringing the literacy template in to another project would help advance the systems literacy effort, because we would learn from the test case.
Right. Yeah.
Okay then.
Yeah.
Any more comments? All right then. I think what we'll do is we'll wait for a response from people that want to basically become involved in a test project, and I'll send out some notes, and we will talk with everyone. See, the next meetings in June. It would be June the 6th. Yeah, the first Saturday. So 3 weeks out. And I'll look forward to talking with everyone then.
Thanks. Very good.
Kevin and Tom are going to read that.
Oh, yeah. Kevin.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Yeah, Kevin and Tom are going to lead the June 6th meeting on.
Right. So the discussion will be, the most general model at the front end, the first phase, as Janet says, is a snowball search for the stakeholders and the content. Right?
Okay.
Snowball search is you get some people, say, who else did we invite? And you keep going until that network closes in on itself, and you do the same with the references. That's the typical model of the front end.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that on June 6th and talk with everyone then.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.